Welcome. I'm Lee Cowan, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Acclaimed filmmaker Martin Scorsese and actor Leonardo DiCaprio have teamed up once again, this time for Killers of the Flower Moon. It's a true tale of greed, deception, and murder on the Osage Nation in Oklahoma to gain control of the oil that was found there and the subsequent fortune that followed. I sat down with the director and the stars to hear how they brought this story to life.
The heart of the entire situation you're in, love, the trust that goes with love, and then this extraordinary betrayal, and still loving. Now, how do we do that?
The short answer, carefully.
We did our absolute best to listen to the Osage community. I don't know if we did a perfect job, who knows, but they embraced us and were so incredibly helpful and so vulnerable.
Later in the show, Leonardo DiCaprio and co-star Lily Gladstone on meeting with relatives of the film's main characters.
How closely did you work with any of the, I know you worked with the Osage itself, but did you work with any relatives? Did you have a chance to talk to anybody who, that must have been sobering?
We sat down with Ernest and Molly's grandchildren, Margie Burkhart, who's heavily featured in the book as well. She sat and talked with us, spoke with us, some family stories to kind of help us flesh out what this dynamic may have been.
Then from the rolling Oklahoma hills of the Osage to open Kansas fields, blooming full with sunflowers. Rocca has a closer look at this humble flower and the happiness it brings us all.
You have this fake field, but it only exists for how long?
Maybe 2 weeks. This one's just opening up.
About 1 million seeds are planted each summer. By early September, they're picture perfect.
We heard about it like online, I think, a lot, and a lot of my friends come out here, post pictures on Instagram and stuff.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. Two of Martin Scorsese's most famous collaborators, Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, are working together in one of the director's films for the very first time. Killers of the Flower Moon is a true American story about the brutal murders of members of the Osage Nation. I sat down with Scorsese and DiCaprio to talk about the film and the care they took to include the Osage in the process. On the plains northwest of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where oil rigs outnumber the bison, lies a stain so dark it makes the crude look crystal clear. A tragically true tale of man's inhumanity to man.
Oh, I was sent down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders.
See what about him?
See who's doing it.
Trying to be as truthful as possible is the only way to tell these stories.
This wealth should come to us.
Oscar winners Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, and a relative newcomer, Lily Gladstone, teamed up with Apple Original Films to bring David Grann's best-selling book, Killers of the Flower Moon, to life.
It's so simple. The front is the front, the back is the back.
He has to make it look like he done it himself.
It just looks like murder. It's not supposed to be that way.
In this case, it's not who done it, who didn't do it.
Set and action!
It's a sweeping epic, 3.5 hours long, shot on location on the Osage Reservation in Oklahoma, where in 2017, we joined author and journalist David Grann.
We're talking about scores of murders, and we're talking about a very small population.
Killers of the Flower Moon took Grann a decade to research. Each thread he pulled took him down a darker road.
This is a story that has real evil in it. Evil like I've never covered or ever experienced or researched about before in my life.
Really? Was that dark?
Yeah, yes.
The Osage. They have the worst land possible.
That evil showed up when the money did. The Osage land was long thought to be worthless.
But they outsmarted everybody. The land had oil on it.
In the 1920s, oil was discovered here, which almost overnight made the Osage among the wealthiest people per capita in the world.
Money flows freely here now.
I do love that money, sir.
Like a magnet, their newfound prosperity attracted outsiders, white men mostly, who came not just to bilk the Osage out of their oil money, but to inherit it.
The only way you could get their money was to marry into their families and then to slowly target them.
At this Osage cemetery in Greyhorse lies the evidence that entire families were wiped out, either shot, blown up, drugged, or poisoned. Ernest Burkhart wormed his way into the Osage family tree by marrying an Osage woman named Molly back in 1917.
You talk too much.
Their real-life love affair, as troubled as it was, is where the film begins.
What
was that?
That's how you are.
I don't know what you said, but it must have been Indian for handsome devil.
The heart of the entire situation you're in, love, the trust that goes with love, and then this extraordinary betrayal, and still loving. Now, how do we do that?
The short answer, carefully.
We did our absolute best to listen to the Osage community. I don't know if we did a perfect job, who knows, but they embraced us and were so incredibly helpful and so vulnerable.
This is the Osage War Shield, typical of that time, that era.
Principal Chief of the Osage Nation, Jeffrey M. Standing Bear, knows the risks of letting Hollywood in.
Native Americans have always had someone else tell them the story about us, but we wanted to tell our story.
When we spoke with the cast and crew, they were all on that same page, especially Martin Scorsese.
You deal with Native Americans and indigenous people, you got to make sure everything we do is as authentic, as accurate, or at least is reasonably accurate from what can be remembered as possible.
And respectful. So to that end, he hired as many Osage as possible, both in front of and behind the camera.
They really worked hard at this and earned our respect.
You felt comfortable with the way they were going to approach it?
If you're not comfortable with Marty Scorsese, you're not going to be comfortable with anybody. I tell you.
I don't sleep anymore.
Come on, man.
DiCaprio's co-star, Lily Gladstone, has critics raving.
I don't even know if you love me anymore.
Molly, of course I love you.
She grew up on the reservation of the Blackfeet Nation in Montana.
She brought so much to not only her character, but to the entire film. She was an amazing partner to have.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
It seems like that's emotional, though, for you to hear.
I mean, I guess I could try to choke it down and put it somewhere else, but why? Yeah. It is. It is. It's a big responsibility, and it's terrifying. It's hard being a Native actor, having this much that you can audition for. Yeah, Marty showed me what's possible.
The film called for her to speak fluent Osage. DiCaprio and De Niro had to master that language too.
The language itself, how hard was that?
It was tough. I mean, he has the benefit of, like, I mean, you did an incredible job, and you also did an incredible job of doing it the way a white man would say it.
That's my job.
For Hollywood trivia buffs, this is the first time that DiCaprio has worked with De Niro and Scorsese on the same film at the same time.
The two of them are so incredible together. Their shorthand, the way they communicate, it's almost through sign language. It's nods, it's this, and I know. I mean, it's incredible to watch.
You said that you have sort of a shorthand with Robert De Niro. What do you have with Leo?
A longhand.
Longhand?
With me, it's a long discussions, grinding things, lots of rehearsals.
Expecting a miracle to make all this go away. You know they don't happen anymore.
For David Grann, seeing all of this come together was both satisfying and to him a bit mesmerizing.
My world is not in Hollywood at all. I am a nerd 24 hours a day.
We caught up with him just before the film debuted for the Osage in Tulsa back in July.
The idea that now we're standing here and there's going to be a film and more people are going to learn about the history, to me that is what is so powerful and remarkable about it to me.
Grann ended his book with a conversation he recalled having with an elderly Osage woman. As she looked out across these plains, she quoted scripture. "The blood cries out from the ground," she said. All these years later, perhaps those cries will finally be heard. Up next, an exclusive excerpt from my chat with Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Lily Gladstone. Something you can only see right here on CBS News Streaming. Stay with us.
Coming here, I think, opened our eyes to not only the Osage culture, but not only how much it affected generations to come, but how active the Osage were as a part of bringing justice to what happened.
As promised, here's more from Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Lily Gladstone.
How important was it? There are so many Osage who were in the film itself. How important was that for you?
I said immediately, well, I knew that going in. I said, I was going to say actors, but we need the people. They can act. We all act. Some less concerned with the camera than others. And we'll just discover that as we go. But it has to be Native American. It has to be indigenous, and that's as simple as that. But not only that, they said, what about behind? I said, behind the camera too. If they could do it, do it.
How many did you end up having on the whole project?
A couple hundred, I think. I'm not quite sure. But it just was a natural outgrowth of the whole project. You can't go there and suddenly come in like a group and then leave and say, okay.
Could you have done this anywhere else, or did you really need to be here?
We had to be here. You had to be in the right places. You had to be here. And we worked it so that we actually shot in Pawhuska. We shot in the Schoen Brothers offices, the real office.
Really?
And the actual Freemasons Hall, too. They're still there. So.
How closely did you work with any of the, I know you worked with the Osage itself, but did you work with any relatives? Did you have a chance to talk to anybody who, that must have been sobering?
We sat down with Ernest and Molly's grandchildren. Margie Burkhart, who's heavily featured in the book as well. She sat and talked with us, spoke with us, some family stories to kind of help us flesh out what this dynamic may have been. And on set, as an extra, we ran into Billy Burkhart, another one of the grandchildren of Ernest and Molly, who's still now, when I come back here, he's a very sweet, quiet man. I'll just be in conversation with somebody and I hear over my shoulder, "Hi, Grandma." I turn around, it's like, "Oh, hi, Billy."
But it must have been sobering too, I guess, because for them this is not that far removed.
It isn't. The generational effects of this, you still feel it. It's still tangible. And I think our job, more than anything, was to listen, because as detailed and incredible as David Grann's book was, it did focus on the birth of the FBI, and this turned into, the original script from that turned into almost a detective story.
It's more of a whodunit.
Like a whodunit. And coming here, I think, especially for Mr. Scorsese and us, opened our eyes to not only the Osage culture, but not only how much it affected generations to come, but how active the Osage were as a part of bringing justice to what happened. So I think a lot of our job was to sit and listen to, direct descendants of people that were affected by the Osage Reign of Terror, and really try to incorporate their story and their truth into the movie we were making. That was our job.
Yeah.
Up next, blooming with joy. Welcome back. Sunflowers are known for their large, happy-looking blossoms, and when there's hundreds of them, well, that just compounds the happiness. Here's Rocca.
Who is responsible for this?
Well, I'm responsible for planting them. She's responsible for putting it on Facebook.
This field of sunflowers is courtesy of Ted and Chris Grinter.
It looks like it goes on forever out there, and it's really pretty.
It is breathtaking when the whole field is in bloom and you just see that sea of yellow.
That sea of yellow has made Grinter Farms in Lawrence, Kansas, one of the state's most popular spots for sunflower lovers. Thousands visit each year.
So tell me about the kinds of people who come here.
All kinds, from everywhere, all over the world, really.
One day I met somebody from Australia, Russia, and China in 5 minutes.
So many people tried coming in 2016, it caused a 10-mile backup on the highway. The Grinters dubbed it Carmageddon.
We broke the interstate.
Mm-hmm. People talk about breaking the internet. You broke the interstate.
The interstate, yes. I got a call, an angry call from a sheriff that said, you have to close it down. And I said, sir, it's a field.
Back in the 1970s, Ted's father hoped to turn sunflowers into biofuel. When that idea went bust, he started harvesting the seeds for bird feed.
You have this big field, but it only exists for how long?
Maybe 2 weeks.
Soon after, Ted joined the family business.
This one's just opening up.
About 1 million seeds are planted each summer. By early September, they're picture perfect.
We heard about it like online, I think, a lot, and a lot of my friends come out here, post pictures on Instagram and stuff.
The couple doesn't charge admission, but there is a donation box. Leave $1, take a flower.
Well, I farm 2,000 acres. I don't make a living off the sunflowers. I mean, it's more of a hobby. That's kind of taken over. If you look around and you see all the smiles on people's faces, we're making a lot of memories.
Fun fact, sunflowers are heliotropic. As they grow, they follow the sun each day through the sky. But after they bloom, they're fixed facing east. And sunflower is something of a misnomer, since each head contains up to thousands of tiny flowers known as florets.
About 5,000 years ago, they became cultivated into these giant sunflowers that we kind of see today.
Caitlin Eckert says sunflowers originated in what's now North America, grown by indigenous people. She oversees educational programming at Powell Gardens near Kansas City.
They would use the oil for like their hair, the seeds they would obviously eat.
And the stems.
Yeah, it's really strong. They used it as a building material, believe it or not.
In the late 1800s, sunflowers flexed their political muscle, becoming a symbol of women's suffrage.
You'll see those campaign pins typically show a sunflower. It became that symbol moving forward.
Now, Kansas may be the sunflower state, but sunflowers are grown across the country. North Dakota actually produces the most. And take a look at these flowers in the Garden State of New Jersey. But only in Ellsworth, Wisconsin, will you find sunflowers like these.
So this is Big Bird. She's so thick, and as it opens up, it looks like Big Bird.
Steve Coffer is known as Sunflower Steve. That's also the name of his seed company.
That can be a cool fall color, a chocolate double flowering sunflower.
Coffer fell into the cut flower business after losing his advertising job in 1999. Traditional sunflowers eventually became his bread and butter. But in 2007, Coffer noticed a rogue sunflower growing in one of his fields.
It's got golden maroon in it. I said, I'd never seen anything like that.
He took 12 seeds from that lone flower and planted them the next year.
10 of them were really ugly looking. They just looked terrible. But one of them looked just like the parent plant. And the other one was this dark, dark maroon with a little bit of lemon in it. So we're going to take our high-tech insemination equipment.
Getting these flowers to reproduce is no small feat.
Couldn't you just get some bees to do this?
I do have bees to do this, but I don't want them to share it with all the other flowers. I want to kind of try to control who gets what.
You're controlling.
experimentation like this has given birth to blooms like Gigi, Lamar, Marley, and Maleficent.
When you're doing this, what are you? Are you like a doctor, a mad scientist, or?
You know, I think I just have a natural curiosity to think, what if?
Sunflower Steve now only sells seeds and in very limited batches, mostly to home gardeners.
Well, it's the only place in the world that exists. So, I mean, when you have something nobody else has, you do have an advantage. But it's taken 15 years to get there.
Coffer puts his original sunflowers to good use, making murals that have become hits on Instagram.
As a child of the 80s, I love the Pac-Man.
Yeah,
that one is great.
For Easter, I had to make the Jesus fish. And when they were done with it, my daughter calls me up and says, "Hey, Dad, can we turn that into a shark?" So they made this big, giant, 25-foot long great white shark out of sunflowers.
Steve Coffer has learned to be patient. Not everything is a success. But he says his happiness comes from spreading happiness.
When I see them and I think they're cool, and then somebody who's never seen it before is just blown away by it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that feeling when I saw that flower the first time too.
I'm Lee Cowan. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you right here next time on Here Comes the Sun.